Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Block presented by Around the Block Network. We're going to start off with a couple of headlines in the making, and we have the NCAA Finals are set. Kansas will take on North Carolina, and a pretty eventful couple games there, especially for UNC, the 8th seed, taking down number 2, Duke. Coach K is officially done, so they'll face a red-hot Kansas in the final. Should be interesting with that matchup. Looked like a lot at first that it could have been North Carolina versus Villanova, but Kansas is the only one seed to come out of four, and they will face North Carolina. Moving on, we've got the Masters next week, and guess who's back? Tiger Woods is at the course walking. He hasn't officially stated that he will play in the tournament, but he's showing up for practice rounds, walking the course, seeing if his body will be able to take the 4 days of the best golf tournament known to mankind. So we'll see what Tiger does, if he's able to play, if he wants to play, and who knows, maybe he'll surprise us one more time. Moving on, then, we have the Florida Panthers who clinched the playoff berth, their first playoff berth in a while. Jonathan Huberdeau is one of the best players on that team and performing at a high status. Could be an MVP season for him. But the Panthers, like I said, just the hottest team in the NHL right now. We'll see what happens the next month here, as the playoff standings will likely be set, and we will have the NHL playoffs coming soon. The last headline I've got going on here is opening day. It starts next week on April 7th, and it kicks off with a classic rivalry between the Red Sox and the Yankees. The game will be in New York around 1 o'clock, so be sure to tune there. And now I'm going to hand it over to the hockey guys with Sam and Harrison.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Welcome into the hockey show here. We got a good show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking Metro contenders. So first up, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Sam Shutcher. You can follow me at SamDman12321. Joining me as always is Harrison Dupree. Harrison, how are you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good, Sam. I'm
Yeah,
excited to talk hockey.
awesome. Let's get into it. First topic today, we have the Rangers post deadline. The New York Rangers, honestly, since their trades have been really, really scary. I think they're a real contender in the Metro Division. Their bottom six, which was their biggest weakness, has been completely revitalized with like Andrew Kopp, guys like that, Frank Vetrano. They've been really strong. Harrison, do you see them as a real contender?
For sure, yeah. Um, I've thought the Rangers have been pretty good all year, but like you said, their bottom six were kind of weak. Definitely saw them as a playoff team, but now another team in the East is good again. This Eastern Conference is looking really scary.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of knew they always had it in them. They have some really good offense, some really good defense. I mean, they have the Norris Trophy winner on their team from last year. But yeah, they're looking really scary. They're not too far behind Carolina for first. I think Carolina's ahead by like 5 points, so that's not um, too far away. But yeah, they're second in the Metro. So yeah,
Okay, here's my thing with the Rangers. All year I thought they were kind of a fluke. I thought they were kind of a flash in the pan. Their 5-on-5 numbers are not that strong. It was Igor Shesterkin and a strong power play. And their bottom six was weak, weak, weak. And so I thought, you know what, Shesterkin might win them a round or two, but they're going to fold in the playoffs. There's no way they're going to make it. But now they just they put some actual NHLers on their bottom six, like Kopp and Vetrano, and I still don't think they're that good, but they have enough with Shesterkin. You know what I'm saying? They definitely are not as good as any other team in the Metro. Pittsburgh, Carolina, they're just not as good as them. But they have Shesterkin, and now they don't have AHLers playing 20 minutes a night. Frank
yeah,
Vetrano, for all the flaws he has, is a strong scoring middle six winger,
yeah,
and Andrew Kopp, really reliable. And so I, I don't want to see them as a Panthers fan in the playoffs, not because I don't think they're going to out talent us, but they're going to goalie us. And that is a terrifying thing. And, people make a lot of talk about Chris Kreider. I think something about Chris Kreider. I don't think I've seen a goal from Chris Kreider this entire year that wasn't a tap-in on a power play. He's not a 40-goal scorer in the way that Austin Matthews is a 40-goal scorer. He's not that guy. But it's working. Artemi Panarin is obviously a stud. I think he's their only real elite offensive talent. Adam Fox maybe as a defenseman too, but that's it. And so for them to be a real contender, it relies on Igor Shesterkin and the rest of the team not blowing it for them. And that might be enough. So I wouldn't want to face them. I want someone else to knock them out as a Panthers fan. We'll see how it goes in the playoffs. But for me, the Rangers are legitimate. They might just goalie their way to a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of disagree with you there. I mean, the stats don't lie. Goals are goals. Kreider, even if they're tip-in shots, I mean, they're still goals.
He is not a 40-goal scorer. Chris Kreider's not
stats don't lie, Sam. Look at it. Tip-ins are goals. But yeah, I want to see them make a deep playoff run. I'm a big Artemi Panarin fan, so I want to see him win a cup if possible with the Rangers. I mean, did he win a cup with Chicago? I don't remember.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to double check that.
I can't remember if he did or not, but regardless, I want him to win a cup even if he's won one already. So
yeah, he's insanely talented and he deserves it for sure.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you on the Shesterkin thing. Definitely their goaltending is the best thing that they have. But, I mean, don't count out their offense. I mean, they have Zibanejad, even though he hasn't had as great as a year as recent years, but still has that prowess. You got Panarin, of course, and then you got Chris Kreider, who is a 40-goal scorer.
Unbelievable.
He is a 40-goal scorer. Tip-in shots are probably one of the most valuable goals in the NHL. They can win you games, and they can win you playoff games.
Yeah, maybe if he does it at 5-on-5. Anyways, another contender in the Metro Division, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh scored 11 goals this week against Detroit. That's pretty scary. Crazy. Honestly, this might be a nice renaissance year. Do you believe in Pittsburgh as a real contender?
Kind of.
Kind of.
I kind of see them as the second round exit. Pittsburgh, 11 goals. That's crazy. You don't really see games like that. It's not the 80s anymore. But yeah, I was actually watching that game, and even people like Brian Boyle were scoring, which didn't Boyle play for the Panthers last season?
He played for the Panthers 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, he played for the Preds for a little bit. That dude is a fossil. But anyway,
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Pittsburgh has been a playoff team for the past few years, obviously. And they won back-to-back cups in 2016, 2017. Rest in peace, my Preds. But they definitely have that playoff experience. I mean, they have a good amount of those guys who were on those cup-winning teams. They have experience in playoffs, but I don't know. Seeing how they've performed the last few years, they always lose to the Islanders somehow, but the Islanders are out of the picture. But I don't know. I could see them playing a team like the Rangers and them losing. But I don't know. They might take the Rangers spot. They're only 1 point behind them, and they're third in the Metro. So them and the Rangers are kind of similar teams.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Christian Mater just said that Zibanejad is a monster as well. Well, thank you. That is a good comment. He also said that the Preds suck. Got to disagree with that there. The Sabres are hot right now, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway.
Yes, we will. My opinion on Pittsburgh is that they should be feared. Listen, this is probably their last cup run as a group, the Malkin, Crosby, Letang group. I think this is their last year. They know that. Yeah. I think they're better than they expected to be. I think Letang is a free agent after this year. Malkin's a free agent after this year. They're not going to keep the same core. This is their last push. I think they know it, and I think they're going to go harder than they have since their cup runs. They are a veteran team. They know what it takes to win, and any team that sees them, it's going to be a tough out.
Yeah.
So I think that if they come out of the Metro, it wouldn't be a shock. I could see them taking on Carolina, 7-game series, and beating Carolina.
Yeah.
I might honestly take them over Carolina just because Carolina doesn't really have the experience, yes, but it's more just the dedication to winning, if that makes sense. They don't have the knowledge that it takes to win a playoff series. We see them fold constantly. I would take Pittsburgh over Carolina in a playoff series.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's kind of like how you feel about the Rangers. I hate the damn Penguins, so I want the first round exit. I don't even want them to make the playoffs because they robbed us of a cup. So I'm kind of salty about that.
That doesn't heal for sure.
No, and so yeah, I could see them matching up well against the Canes because, like you said, the Canes, they've had a really good team the past 3 years, but they haven't really gotten it done. But I feel like that's a lot to say about a lot of teams in the league this year trying to prove that they can win a cup. So, I mean, you never know. I'm really excited with how the playoffs are going to be.
These playoffs are going to be amazing.
Yeah, there's going to be so many good teams, and there's going to be so many upsets and so many teams that you think are going to win the cup, but don't.
Yeah, I mean, all the teams we think are a lock, there can only be one winner. So whether it's Colorado, Florida, Tampa, or Calgary, 3 of those are getting upset at least. So it's going to be a pretty amazing playoffs, and Pittsburgh, I think, has a real chance. And honestly, if they play New York round 1, that is going to be something that you need to watch. That is appointment viewing for every single one of those games.
Yeah, I agree.
So moving on to a team in the Atlantic Division, not making the playoffs, but I think have a real bright future, the Buffalo Sabres. Sabres are looking up as of late. They are 7-2-3 in their last 12 games. They lost this afternoon to a Florida Panthers team. I wouldn't blame them too much. I mean, that is a tough team to play. Happens to everyone. Everyone loses to the Panthers, unfortunately, except Seattle. But, no team can beat Seattle. But do you believe in Buffalo and their direction? Do you think they have something here that could be sustainable long term?
It's definitely a good glimpse into their future. I mean, I don't think, they're obviously not making the playoffs this year. Maybe they can make a push for it next year, but definitely then in the next 5 years, they'll actually start contending again. But yeah, I think it's a really good glimpse at their future. I mean, Alex Tuck has been fantastic for the club. I think he's a really good replacement for Jack Eichel because, like Matt just said in the comments, Jack Eichel is a bum. Yeah, Buffalo fans don't like Eichel very much, which I can kind of attest to that because he kind of, talked a lot of shit about the city, and then he left, and
he was not a leader for them. Absolutely not. He was
definitely
not the saver. Sam Reinhart, on the other hand, that's a good player.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, they've been really hot lately. I mean, they beat the Predators a few nights ago, and that was a good way to honor RJ, who just retired. Great broadcaster. He will be missed. But yeah, all these prospects are looking really good. They're one of the teams that I can see contending, in the next 10, 15 years, like along with the Red Wings. Like they're one of the few teams where their future is just brighter and brighter.
Absolutely.
When you're drafting first overall and first round picks over and over again the past few years, your future should look good.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like they're finally putting all those pieces together. I mean, Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin as a 1-2 defensively, that's going to scare everybody in this league.
Yeah.
I don't even know a better 1-2 defensive pairing in the league than Dahlin and Power, what they could be at least. Their potential is up there with anyone. They got rid of Ristolainen for a pretty good return. I think that was a really smart move.
Yeah.
I think that they have a lot of picks now, a lot of nice young players that they got from all their trades. Devin Levy as a goalie looks really strong for Team Canada. I would definitely ban on him being an NHL goalie in the future.
Yeah.
Tage Thompson has been a really nice story. I don't think
Mhm.
he's a first-line center, but as a second-line center, he could be pretty good.
Yeah.
So Alex Tuck also really nice forward. So they have pieces and they have a direction I think everyone's bought in on. That's the big thing. They have a direction I think they learned from past disasters, not to
I
jump the
think so
gun,
too.
not to sign Jeff Skinner to an 8x8 and
Mhm.
completely blow up the team chemistry, not to sign Kyle Okposo. They
Yeah.
didn't need to do that. And now he's not the same player he was. So I think they know what the last regime didn't know is that
Mhm.
these things take time and that as long as everyone's bought in, it's going to work. And I think they see that, and I look forward to seeing them as a real contender in the East.
Yeah.
Whether it's next year, the year after, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely the dumpster fire has been put out. Like,
I do think
we
so.
can
Now it's
move,
Arizona.
we can move past that. But yeah, like you said, guys like Tuck has been playing really well. It's really good to see Rasmus Dahlin finally producing consistently.
Yeah, so happy about
He
that.
has the right pieces around him now to actually start producing and finally start developing in the league. Because Dahlin definitely has that potential to be a star. I just think he's kind of a late bloomer.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And I think Dahlin, with a lot of other defensemen, it's the same thing. They take a few years, and it's no big deal. And Owen Power maybe is not great right away, but he's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to bust. He's been playing great over in the Frozen Four,
Mhm.
which are now wrapping up. Now they're the last four teams. We have Michigan, Denver, Minnesota State, and Minnesota. Michigan will be playing Denver, and then Minnesota State will be playing Minnesota in the Frozen Four beginning April 7th. Pretty exciting tournament. Harrison, who do you have?
Well, in these matchups, everyone's been picking Denver, but I'm gonna pick Michigan. Michigan has a super high-powered offense, and I feel like that's really gonna elevate them. And then the second matchup, definitely Minnesota State. Minnesota State's my favorite to win it all. I've been keeping up with them the most, and I feel like they're very well-rounded. They have a really good defense and a pretty good offense.
Mm-hmm.
Their playoff run has been kind of interesting. I don't know if you saw a few weeks ago when they won their conference championship and they presented them the trophy, and then they reviewed the goal and it was called back. So they had to get all the players back on the ice, play overtime again, and then they finally won it again in overtime with a good goal.
Oof, that's insane.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. But I think these are going to be great games. These four teams are pretty standard. As hockey teams, these are the big four.
Yeah.
Every year they're in the mix for the college championship.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see what Michigan can do.
Yeah.
Mostly, that's what I'm looking forward to. Owen Power, obviously, and then another guy I want to keep an eye on is Mackie Samoskevich.
Mhm.
Third line winger for them right now. Not getting so much ice time, but he is so skilled. Florida Panthers prospect. I want to see if he can make a mark in this huge stage. I want to see what he can do. I would love to see it. Another team I want to keep my eye on is Minnesota State, which we talked about. They are a good team.
They are very good.
They have a lot of skill. I think if we see a Michigan, Minnesota State, I would pick Minnesota State to win it all.
So that's your pick too?
That's my pick, Minnesota State.
Okay. But yeah, my opinions on all the teams, I just have a feeling that Michigan is going to power through Denver, but I'm not counting out Denver because don't get me wrong, Denver is a really good team. Denver actually holds a lot of the Red Wings prospects like Mazur, Uem, Tuomisto. All those guys are the Red Wings' future. Steve Yzerman has been putting together his dream roster for the past few years, and those guys are on it. So I'm definitely going to be watching Denver because a lot of that is the Red Wings' future. And I've been praising the Red Wings a lot, which I hate because I don't like the Red Wings. But
you're anti-Red Wings.
They definitely have a super bright future. But yeah, honestly, that will be an awesome matchup for Michigan fans because a lot of Michigan fans are Red Wings fans, so they'll be cheering for their home team, Michigan, but also they can look at Denver and be excited for the guys on that squad to join their NHL team eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime Steve Azerman's in on a prospect, I'm in on a prospect. He has a really good sense for these guys.
For
And
sure.
I love watching, the college playoffs go on because I think it's honestly one of the best prospect development programs is playing for college because it is such a high stakes environment. And so it's a really great way to get used to NHL games, get used to, the stakes that come in that you don't really get in the CHL. And you're playing against other people your own age. You're not playing against 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds like you
Yeah.
do in the CHL. So I
Mhm.
think it's a really great stepping stone for all these players. I think that, whoever comes out, we're going to see a lot of great competition.
I agree.
All right, looking forward to it. I think that's going to wrap us up here. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. We're going to send it back to Matt, who's got football next.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, boys. I appreciate it. That's the second time I've muted myself in the transition, but practice makes perfect. But yeah, Tim, thanks for coming on for football again. Appreciate it, buddy.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Got a lot of things to talk about in different categories of football today. And, the first one I want to talk about is Bruce Arians finally just retires. As soon as Brady, comes out of retirement, probably like a month or so, decides he's done. He's had a good career, won his Super Bowl, leaves the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Todd Bowles takes over as the head coach. What are your thoughts on this, right away? Do you think it's something that Buck fans should be stressed about? Do you think this is some type of message to the NFL and maybe how the organization's being run?
Bruce Arians has to be the only head coach in the NFL that can retire 2 months after the head coaching cycle is finished and it really not have an impact on their team. Like when Bruce said, I didn't really do much, the man wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
Byron Leftwich and Tom ran that offense. That was their offense and their run game coordinator, Goodwin. He's one of the, up and coming assistant coaches in the league. Bruce didn't do a damn thing for that team. I know everyone loves Bruce because he's a fun character. And in Arizona, he was a great coach, and he was a great. I read his book. He talks about working with Peyton and Ben and Carson Palmer and all those guys. I think Andrew Luck got mentioned briefly, but post first retirement, Bruce Arians, that wasn't a head coach. That was what they used to have in Japan back in the samurai days, like a figurehead used to run the country, but really it was people behind the scenes making the decisions. Everything on that offense was Tom and Byron Leftwich. And I get that Todd Bowles has been there for a while. He's put in his time. He deserves another shot to be a head coach. But not giving this job to Byron Leftwich after lucking into keeping him because Jacksonville wouldn't give him what he wanted, not making him the head coach is going to haunt them for years because he's going to be a head coach next year somewhere else. And he is like an up-and-coming head coach in the NFL. I believe Byron Leftwich is going to be an awesome head coach when he gets his shot.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to just see how this all unfolds, especially in the offseason. Like you said, how they go through the whole coaching searches for the entire NFL, and then all of a sudden he drops. And you mentioned all those other names that have the potential of being good coaches down the road. Gives, like we said, Todd Bowles. Now he's the head coach there, and he ran that defense, made sure that they were competitive for a guy like Tom Brady. Like you said, that Tom is running the offense. He's putting in the plays. He knows how to manage his time, make sure that the offense of the opposing team won't get the ball when needed. But kind of just to sum up this real quick, I don't think it's something crazy or this needs to be major headlined. If anything, it's good that Todd Bowles got another shot at being a head coach, and hopefully, for some people, hopefully that'll bring him some success in the playoffs and maybe a Super Bowl. But yeah, I am going to agree with you on this. It really does not mean much for Bruce to step down. If anything, congrats on his career. I think I saw the other day that they were just talking about the one thing I will say about Bruce is what he did and the people he brought in. That was his specialties. That's why he was the head coach. That's why they needed him. He was a recruiter for coaching staff. future coaching staff and getting everybody in and getting the right team formed. If anything, it's kind of like a GM, but at a head coach. So I think he did well in that aspect. And I think that's what the end of his career is mainly going to be known for. Good for him, won a Super Bowl. Comes from Brady mostly. And I think it's not, it's not that important. I don't think it's that drastic. Good for him though. That's all I got to say. And, with that, let's just move on to our next topic. Just wanted to get that out of the way pretty quick. But next topic, we've got the NIL deals going on in college football. And to me, I mean, I think it's a little much. I don't necessarily think athletes the ages coming in from the age of 18, possibly leaving at the age of 22 or whatever it is, should be making millions and millions of dollars. What are your thoughts?
I'm fine with them, making the money, but I do think that when you use NIL as a recruiting tool, it's only harming the players in the long term, because there's a lot of players that are going to make
the way I look at it is you have free agency now in college football,
with the
and that's what sucks. I mean, that's what sucks. That's why so many people have been talking about for years. I love watching college football way more than I like watching the NFL. Yes, it may be because of like the way the officials get involved and stuff, or maybe it's just you have the vision that it's a storyboard in the NFL, but college is just so pure because you have these kids. They would come out, they would get recruited if they were high level prospects. And then even if they weren't and they make their way up, say they're a walk-on, they have their education paid for. They live the lavish lifestyles on these campuses. And, at first when I heard NIL was coming into place, I'm thinking, okay, this is just if they want to sign a couple footballs, maybe sign a couple baseballs, softballs, whatever it may be, maybe do a t-shirt of theirs, they get a couple bucks. I don't think millions of dollars, though, is necessary, especially giving it to a kid this young. I don't think that's also a good thing either. I mean, I'm going to think now most of these kids in high school are going to have to start looking for financial advisors because they're not going to be able to know what to do with all this money. And kind of going to the other point is you have all these conferences now. It's free agency. And the thing is, there is no penalty for these players. Say if they go, for example, Nico, he just signed with Tennessee, or he committed to Tennessee, reports to up to $8 million a year for a 5-star recruit quarterback. Just thinking out loud here. If he does one season there, and if he's good or if he's bad, he can leave anytime he wants. He can enter the transfer portal. There's no penalty towards these players right now. And that's what necessarily I don't like. And that's for me, a direct factor from NIL.
And I think, not every kid is Arch Manning, right? Arch Manning has the right people giving him advice. He's got Peyton and Eli and Cooper and Archie. Not every kid is like that. There are a lot of kids out there, probably more than there's not, that have guys in their ear that are concerned with lining their own pockets, right? Oh, hey man, you got to go here because, you're going to make, $10 million in the 4 years that you're there. But you're sending them to like a program that not proven developers of NFL talent, right? Bad coaching staff, not good facilities, but hey, this local company or, Nike, whatever it will be, will give you all this money to play there because you're a big name. And we like to claim that because we have so much information now with the draft, that what school you go to doesn't matter. I can say the guys making those decisions still care, right?
Yeah.
Especially
because I agree.
There are a lot of small school success stories, right? A lot of guys that have come from small schools and become absolute studs in the NFL. And there's also just as many guys who were playing against bad competition, looked a little bit better than they actually were, and they became first-round picks and they busted immediately. His name is escaping me right now, but 2019 first-round draft pick, Texans offensive lineman from Alabama State. I don't know why his name is escaping me. Titus Howard. It's Titus Howard.
Yeah. Yep.
Dude stinks.
I know. And listen, I get it. This is good for the kid's future and all, but like just the comment we just had up there. I mean, it's basically we're having no salary cap now. in the college atmosphere. It's basically like this guy said, a small, like all the small programs. I'm thinking in the next couple of years, or give it like 5 years, dude, some of these conferences, maybe like the MAC and stuff, like I don't know if they're going to be able to, get to the next level or try and get better and better and better when they can't sign players, or nobody's going to leave a transfer portal or go into a transfer portal and go to the MAC unless they can't find a college that can't give them money. And then I look at it at this point. Who was the guy? I'm forgetting his name now too. There was a number 1 recruit for Florida State. Your team, your college was going there, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, goes to Jackson State.
Morning of signing day.
Goes to Jackson State. I listen, nothing against Jackson State, but they're trying to build the culture, but it's just one team in that particular conference. It can't make all the other schools better, because they don't have the money. And I know there are some rumors out there that, like, okay, the reason why the kid went there is because of Deion Sanders. And where does Deion Sanders work for? Barstool. And who owns half of Barstool is Penn National Gaming. I'm pretty sure they maybe signed a pretty big check for them. That's what I'm looking at.
Rumored, I think it was $2 million was the original rumor that came out.
Either way, though, I mean, it's just the fact that you have to deal with millions of dollars for one athlete. And, it kind of takes away from the tradition of being, recruited, committing to a team, and then staying with that team and literally building your legacy through one school. Because the way I see it, what was the kid's name that went to Jackson State?
Travis Hunter.
Yeah, Travis Hunter, right? Because now I'm looking at it this way too. He could literally stay at Jackson State for 1 year if he wants to, collect his money,
right back,
and then enter the transfer portal and go anywhere he wants.
He is a little background about Travis Hunter. Grew up not too far from the campus. He's from South Georgia. Diehard Florida State fan his entire life. Loved Deion, Jalen Ramsey. Those are his heroes. He did take a visit to Jackson State once just to meet Deion, according to him, but clearly something was in the works. A guy like Travis Hunter, right? Like if you watch his high school, I know it's high school tape, but he's one of the freakiest athletes I've ever seen, right? You can tell that is a guy, he's got NFL aspirations. And even though Jackson State right now, biggest name of all the HBCUs because of Deion, all that, all the other HBCUs are following in Jackson State's footsteps. Almost all of them are now hiring former NFL players to be their head coaches.
Yeah.
But Travis Hunter is going to make his money, right? And he's going to dominate that conference.
Oh, of course. What happens if not even close? Yeah.
What happens if the NFL, and we know who runs the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. They make decisions that sometimes we wouldn't make. They still believe like it's 1984 sometimes.
Yep.
What if they just decide, well, Travis Hunter wasn't going up against NFL caliber wide receivers? He plays both ways. Wasn't going up against.
He doesn't care at the end of the day as long as he's got money in his back pocket.
But is the $2 million worth because now these rookie contracts, they're like fully guaranteed almost.
Yeah.
Is that worth falling to like pick 28? Look, Travis Hunter, athletic ability, top 5 pick type of talent, right? Like Kyle Hamilton level athletic ability. If the NFL decides, well, you didn't go up against, the right dudes in college, so you're the 26th pick in the draft. Was the $2 million worth it?
Yeah. I mean, the way it can go back and forth so many different ways, because one way I would think about it is if you're not looking at, making that team's culture different, making an uprising in a different conference. The way I see it is, okay, you have these young kids who are looking at some of these star athletes or their favorite football heroes who are suffering from, injuries they had during the season. Now that they're retired, they're not their usual selves. I mean, they've just been hurting and they've had tremendous injuries. Why wouldn't you at this point be like, okay, I can make $2 million for 1 year going to this school. If I am smart enough and I do seek help for financial advice, I can start using that money for investments. And it's a safer start. It's a safer start to your young adult life to do it that way. Yes, they do want to live big. They do want to get to their dreams, which is the NFL. But I look at Hunter and stuff, and he may be like, okay, 1 year there, and then I'm going to go into the transfer portal. But then again, that could really scare away some big schools because then they're like, I don't know if he's committed to being at a school or if he's just all about the money. That's what's going to be really interesting going forward, seeing how the relationships are with these big universities that are giving big money to these young kids. I want to see if you do sign a big contract, are you going to be loyal to that school? Where's the trust at? I think it's going to explode. I know I've talked about it in my Bills podcast. Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss coach, he's been very vocal about this. And you can see he's pretty annoyed about it. And he's trying to adjust to it as all the other college football organizations and coaches are and athletic directors. It's just a weird time. But to wrap it up, basically, what I'm saying is I'm okay with them getting money, but not millions of dollars.
Yeah, and I think you got to be careful if your only reasoning for signing with a certain school is, well, they're going to pay me money right away, because you have to look at the coaching staff. In college football, your talent only takes you so far. You got to be developed by the right guys. You know, and we talk about, and the NFL offensive line coaches are so important. There's like 9 good ones, and they stay through every single head coach that comes through. It's because some positions are just hard to coach, right? When LSU fired Coach O and their staff started breaking up, I mean, their DB coach was a hot commodity. I think he ended up at Florida. But, I mean, he had calls from like 25 schools that wanted to go get him.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. Definitely one we're going to be keeping our eye on for the next for the rest of our lives, really. But really, I would think the next 2 years are going to, identify where this is going with the whole college football and just college sport atmosphere of paying players. So with that being said, I want to get into our last segment here, which is my top 10 or top 5 NFL teams. I'm going to list them off, go through them. Then I want to hear your opinion. I want you to get in on it. Just let me know if I'm acting like a moron, and I'll probably tell you that you're acting like a moron. If you're disagree with me, it'll be a good time. So starting off with my first team, I'm picking the Tampa Bay Bucks. If Tom Brady was not there, I would say, nope, they're done. But he's the darling child of the NFL. He's going to get all the respect from every single team that they play against, to maybe officiating from time to time. That's just my Buffalo Billsness coming out. But no, I think they do have a solid roster. Re-signing a couple of their key guys now that Brady came back, a little bit of a scare. I did see a video actually come out the other day where Rob Gronkowski, I think he was out at a barbershop getting his haircut in Tampa or something like that. And he basically said, yeah, he's coming back, but he wants to give it like 2 months to give Brady that 2-month scare that Brady did to Gronk. So I'm going to take them at 5. And then from 5, I want to go to number 4 here. And for number 4, I've got the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers comes back. I think as long as he's there, they're going to be able to do some serious damage. Plus, the NFC is wide open. There really is no competition. And you have how many times has he won MVP? Twice now?
4 total, 2 in a row.
4 total, right? But either way, I mean, the kid's just not even a kid. He's an old man, but he does it in the regular season. He's good enough to get you to the playoffs and stuff. I think going forward, starting off this season, they are number 4 on my list. Going into number 3, though, I've got the Chargers. Now, this was so hard for me to pick because you have the Chiefs, Raiders, and Denver, obviously, to pick from for that division. I think they're going to absolutely kill each other division-wise. They're going to split so many games. You have a young kid in Justin Herbert who keeps getting better and better and better. I love the moves they've made at defense. So I think going forward, I think they have the complete team in that division. And I think if they wrap up enough wins from their division, they'll be able to really go far into the playoffs. I know last year, the way it ended, it was a little like, come on, you should be making the playoffs with that roster. I mean, you got Eckler out there, you got Keenan Allen, Herbert, as I mentioned, and now you add in Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson. I think it's just nothing but going higher up on the charts for the Chargers. And then going to number 2, I've got the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. Once they lock down Matt Stafford again for a little bit, and then obviously I think just having Aaron Donald possibly coming back. He hasn't said he's retired or anything yet. I think that is the key. He is the quarterback of that defense. He's the quarterback of the defense in the entire NFL, best defensive player in the NFL. As long as you got those two going at it, and like I said, going back, the NFC is wide open. The only two teams they're really going to have to worry about are the Packers and the Bucs, and I think they're able to get by them easily. So I would expect them to go pretty far into the playoffs. And then number one, everybody get ready. It's the Buffalo Bills. I know I'm a homer, but it's legit now. They should. This is probably the greatest team to exit in the divisional round that we've seen in a long time. Josh Allen, first off, went 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in 2 playoff games. Those are some crazy stats right there. And you got to think, only 13 seconds away from getting that win in Kansas City on the road, a team that they've really struggled with. And really, I think the main factor there is just trying to lock down Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill now leaving, got traded and signed with the Dolphins. I think it's going to be a different Kansas City team. So I think the Bills are going to be able to get at least a little bit higher in the AFC standings towards the end of the regular season, because that division of the Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos, they're going to beat each other up. And I think adding Von Miller is just such a key thing. And it may not be like the production level that everybody's going to be like, okay, you signed him to this big contract and he's not getting all the sacks. It's a culture thing. The thing that Brandon Beane, their GM, has done over the past 5 years is unbelievable. Every single person that he drafts and brings in has a true potential of being a starter that year, if not 2 years down the road. And what's Von Miller going to do? He's going to take away double teams from guys like Ed Oliver on that defense, and mentor a young kid in Gregory Rousseau who works the edge. And just from that, too, they had the number 1 defense going into the playoffs. I mean, you have the number 1 defense, most likely going forward, possibly the number 1 offense, and their special teams has gotten so much better. I honestly think if they had won that game in Kansas City, they would have beaten the Bengals outright. In Buffalo, it would have been an outright win. Also, a little fun fact, since Coach McDermott has been with the Bills, he has not lost a playoff game in Buffalo, so that's another reason why I would have picked them. I don't know if they would have beaten the Rams, but I think now that like a guy like Von Miller has left the Rams, come to the Bills, it just creates that culture. It creates that character. And I think just another year of pissed off Josh Allen. Good luck, NFL. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, not a bad list at all. I think Rams and Bills, top to bottom, are the 2 best teams in the NFL. I think a Super Bowl with those 2 teams would have been great, and it'll be great if it happens this year. Only team that really brings me question marks are those last 3. Each of them has their reasons. With Tampa, interior of the offensive line, Ali Marpet retiring, and Alex Kappa going to the Alex Kappa ain't that good anyway, but he's still someone you got to replace.
Yeah, but at the same time, remember, it's Brady.
Yeah,
so
anybody
anybody who steps in at O-line, they want to hold a little bit extra as long as they're protecting Tommy Boy. The ref's saying throwing out the laundry. So that's all I'm saying there.
I think if you ask me this in 2 months, I'd put the Packers on this list after they make all those draft picks. But right now, that's a team that I've been saying it for like 4 years with the Packers. Don't know what it is. Don't know why. They hate speed. Outside of like Jair Alexander, this team just hates speed. They don't want to have fast players. And when they played Tampa in the NFC Championship game, only reason it was close because Tom threw 3 picks in the second half.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you got guys like Deebo Samuel just doing absolutely crazy things around the ball.
When Green Bay played Tampa last year, 2020.
Oh, Tampa. Sorry, Tampa.
The championship game. Tampa was track meeting them in the first half. It was an athletic mismatch. And then Tom threw all those picks. Aaron caught fire a little bit, started connecting with Devontae Adams, and they got back in the game right there up until the end. But before that, my Lord, they didn't look like 2 equal teams were on the field. One team just looked so much faster.
They did, and the reason why, though, for example, I was literally thinking of the 49ers of putting on this list. And the reason why is just because of their whole team, right? But I don't know where their quarterback is. And then the reason why I'm sticking, though, with the Packers is solely on Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. As long as you have him there, you can bring in any wide receiver you want. And like in the draft, I expect them to go out and get at least 3 wide receivers, maybe build up their O-line a little bit more. And I know they just re-signed their tight end as well. Maybe they franchise tagged him. I'm not 100% sure. But I think as long as you bring in young talent, Rodgers is going to make him look like a star. And then going forward, obviously lost a little couple pieces at defense, but it's just more for me about their way of getting to the playoffs, winning their division. To me, it's the easiest thing in the NFC going into this year. I mean, they have to worry about what? Detroit, Chicago, like where's the competition? You know they're going to win their division next year, regardless of what their team looks like. Minnesota's not going to do anything. So, like I said, they're probably going to sweep their division. They'll probably win their division. And then with that being said, they'll probably have a high seed once again. I just think this time around, I think it's almost a good thing that they kind of did get rid of like Devontae Adams or split up the Adams to who's their running back again? I'm forgetting off the top of my
Aaron
head.
Jones and AJ Dillon.
Aaron Jones, right? Because if you look at that last final drive they had against the 49ers, the only thing Rodgers was doing was looking at Devontae Adams.
Yep, locked on.
Did not do anything else. I honestly think, like, don't get me wrong, he's like I would say the best. I think Tyreek Hill is the best receiver in the game right now, solely on his speed. But he's one of the top wide receivers in the league. That can sometimes hurt a team, especially when you're just relied on him the entire time. You look at, like, for example, the Bills. When they were playing the Chiefs, everybody's like, okay, Stephon Diggs. No, it was Gabe Davis, a second-year player who racked in 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's what it takes to win games. So I think, honestly, it's a good move they got rid of Adams, and they can kind of restart, bring in that young talent in the draft, or maybe there's a couple other free agents out there that got some like low-key killer speed. I think they're going to be a better team going forward, to be honest.
Gabe Davis, another 2020 NFL draft wide receiver the Packers could have taken instead of Jordan Love.
That is very true, but that time has passed. So I think that's about, we just got to end it at that point. We all know that this is probably Rodgers' last year, like officially now. So that's the only other reason why I would put them in my top 5 right now.
Yeah, I think the only other comment I got is the Chargers scare me, right? Because last year they bring in Brandon Staley, who's like this revolutionary defensive mind. He's gapped up to stop the pass instead of the run. And the Rams defense was so crazy, number 1 in the NFL with Staley. And then the Chargers were horrid on defense last year. And with Joey Bosa, with Derwin James, they added Chris Harris, Kenneth Murray, all those boys. Because Brandon Staley, defensive mastermind, his defense didn't carry over without Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Now they add J.C. Jackson, they add Khalil Mack, so we'll see. Does this defense that he runs only work with Aaron Donald, or can it be, added somewhere else? But there were too many games last year.
Just think about, like, it's kind of like the whole thing with when you add these pieces, double teams go away. Yeah. It's a whole new, like, change in atmosphere for these players, especially a guy like Khalil Mack. I think he is going to have a tremendous season with the Chargers because he got out of a terrible, terrible culture in Chicago. It was beating him alive. I know the injuries are a factor, and you can blame that on his production. I think this is just a whole reset. It's going to be better for his head. You got Bosa on the other side. That's going to be insane to watch. So I think they're too good. And I think from that division, yes, Denver got Russell Wilson. I don't think they're a complete team yet, though. You look at the Raiders. They got Devontae Adams, but they've got the
stinks.
They do, yes, but even like their offense too. They have Renfro and Adams. Like that right there should be like scary enough. But for me, I don't trust Derek Carr that much. I don't think he has the potential. Yes, he's a flashy guy that is always in the top 10 and throwing yards at the end of the season. But it doesn't matter when it comes to playoffs. So that's just me there.
Yeah, I think my final point with the Chargers is I would maybe swap them for the Browns if, a certain
Deshaun guy.
No, not a Deshaun guy. Don't start that with me. I was the leader of the anti-Deshaun Watson movement. Never thought I'd be at the forefront of that, but here I am.
There you
But
go.
let's say Deshaun can play 17 games. Hopefully he does not. That would
Yeah.
be a gross miscarriage of justice by the NFL.
Yeah.
But if he does, I would put them over the Chargers because I get the Chargers got better. But for a team that was so loaded, even last year, they can't survive a bad Justin Herbert game. Even they can't survive a bad Justin Herbert quarter. They put so much on him in that offense. I don't know. You can go look at it. Almost every single Chargers loss last year had a second half turnover from Justin Herbert. Like they can't survive a bad drive from him. Hopefully, I think they gave up almost 30 points a game last year. I think it was like 27.
Yeah. I mean, I strictly remember. I believe it was week 17. Now that we have 17 games, 18, week 18 being the last one, they played the Houston Texans, and they just could not move the ball
They can't stop
at
a
all.
nosebleed.
It's just like I said earlier, they are one of those teams last year where it's like, how did they not make the playoffs? Or how did they get themselves in a situation with the Raiders at the last game of the year where all they needed to do was kneel the ball or do whatever happened, unfolded to make the playoffs and at least just, start the trend of a guy like Herbert having playoff games under his belt. But I think this year is different, solely just because I think the attraction of their look at defense is going to change. And I think it is going to be an absolute battle in that division. People are going to get banged up. And I personally think that Herbert, besides Mahomes, I think Herbert's honestly the best quarterback in that division. I think he's honestly a little bit better than Russell Wilson right now, strictly because of age and because of Wilson's injuries in the past and just the team that he has right now. That's why I put him in there. But if like you said, though, you picked Cleveland. Do you have any other teams that would be in your top 5?
I think we keep the same top 2, Bills and Rams. Like I said,
Okay.
top to bottom, unbelievable rosters.
Yeah.
A ready-to-go Browns team, right? The addition of Amari Cooper.
It's like it should work. It should work there with Watson if he does play. I mean, they had the best line in football, the best two backs in football.
I mean, the roster is just it's beautiful.
You got Myles Garrett running their defense. I don't know really much about their secondary. I think they're
Denzel Ward.
I mean,
Denzel Ward's a stud, but he's got to stay healthy.
Not good. Yeah, still developing. That's the key term right there. So that's why I don't have them up there yet. They were probably in my top 10 for sure, though.
I think I personally would probably drop the Packers out of the top 5. And a lot of this comes back to the quarterback position. I'm one of the bigger fans of this guy.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, I think this year are going to be the bound. Like they were 8-3 before Lamar's injury last year.
Yeah.
Right? And they were another team that his numbers were god awful because they were just asking him to do so much. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Your all-world left tackle gone. Right. You're playing street free agents at running back from training camp on. Right. You draft a receiver in the first round. He gets hurt day 1 of camp. I think I said it earlier this week on Twitter talking with somebody. Mark Andrews is a great player.
My goodness.
Top 5 tight end. But if that dude's getting 153 targets, your offense is not sustainable long term. I think
I'll tell you what, I took it this past year because he won me a fantasy football championship.
I had Lamar, so I lost once he got hurt. We're starting Ryan Tannehill in the playoffs.
Oh, sorry.
But I think our list would be at the top, very similar. I would include the Browns with an asterisk there, obviously. And then, it's a toss-up towards those 2 NFC teams at the end and teams like Baltimore. I do think Cincinnati's roster, top to bottom, is really good. Don't know if they have the high-level talent that those teams do, like at the top. But you want to talk about just deep, settled rosters, I think the Bengals are pretty good. I think the Bengals do have probably a top 3 receiving core.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's crazy to say.
The only hard thing for me is to pick all these AFC teams in a top 5. And even if they are you could say, they're definitely the better team, but an NFC team has a better record because they're not playing anyone. I'm going to be like, listen, it's all about winning games, no matter what the situation is. And at least as of right now, before the draft, and I'll have you on when we, get to draft week, and we'll redo our little list here, and we'll definitely figure out which teams we think are going to be the top 5. But as of right now, just right now with the history we have of these players, these organizations, those are my top 5. And obviously everything's going to be up for debate and change down the road.
Yeah, that's a fun segment. I like doing that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. That was football, and we're going to throw it over to basketball. I know, Tim, you're going to hang on here, and Ben's going to join you. So thanks for joining me, though.
See you, man. Had a good time.
See you, buddy.
What's going on, Tim?
What's up, Mr. Number 2 in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I mean, hey, did not think if you would ask me a month or two ago if we'd be here, I don't think I would have said yes. But
the surgeon Boston Celtics. How about that?
I know. I love it. Some great stuff you guys had over there in the NFL. Again, loving the comments again. Some interesting ones, that's for sure. But excited to talk some basketball.
Yeah, can't wait. So let's not bury the lead. It's the Texas-sized elephant in the room. Final Four the other night. Game 1 started off pretty bad. I think Kansas went up about 10-0. And then it was a nightmare night for Villanova because I think they played a pretty good basketball game, not a great one, but Kansas just couldn't miss. And it's like when you're playing against like the Warriors back in the day with Steph and Clay. It's like you can do anything, right? You can come up with the best game plan. You could have a bunch of super long defenders. If the dudes just make shots, like that's what the game comes down to. You could play a great game and lose because the other team made probably some bad shots.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, I thought Villanova was going to win this game before the game started. I had them picked, everything, and I mean I think again we got to give Kansas more credit than we're giving them. I mean they were a team that nobody I don't think really picked, and they were a 1 seed. They were a 1 seed, and they were the only 1 seed pretty much not talked about that much up until now. I remember before I don't think I had one person tell me they had Kansas even going to the finals or even getting to the Final Four. So, I mean, it's good to see Bill Self get back there. He's looking for another one. I hope he can get it. I mean, it's obviously going to be a tough game against now UNC. But yeah, they controlled that game from the outset, and it was just one of those games, yeah, like you said, for Villanova, where Kansas just had it rolling, and they kept it going the entire game. They didn't let up. And now they're going to the finals. So props to Kansas. Nobody had them picked. Honestly, I think more people might have had UNC picked to go to the finals than Kansas, at least that I knew. So good for Kansas. We'll see them there. I'm excited to watch them. But on the other side, we obviously got UNC and Duke, and that was just a phenomenal game. I mean, I know, obviously, if you're a Duke fan, it's tough to see Coach K go out that way and lose his last game, especially to UNC, their rival. But, I mean, it was a fun game to watch. And I want to talk about Caleb Love real quick because that man is going to be something. I mean, he's, 5'10", I think. He's just one of the shortest guys on the court, but it seems like everything he threw up, especially in that second half, just went in. And I mean, he hit that late three it was kind of like that late three was kind of one of those feelings like, this game, that's it. That's going to be it for Coach K. But Caleb Love has been one of those guys that this whole tournament, he's been impressing me. And I think he's going to be insane. And I can't wait to see what he does in the finals. But yeah, good for UNC and good for Kansas so far. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I had to look at that because you're right. When I watched the game, I'm like, this dude is tiny. Shame on the University of North Carolina for lying to us because they have Buddy listed at 6'4", and I'll tell you right now, he's not. He's 6'4". I'm 6'2".
Yeah, there's no way.
But the player that I want to shout out, obviously Caleb Love, unbelievable game, but his teammate, Bako or Bakot, had 21 rebounds, 8 offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
Like when you have scorers like Caleb Love out there, if you keep giving them opportunities, the ball will eventually go in the bucket. Yep. And credit to Paolo Banchero, I think he played pretty well. He had 20 and 10, but it just felt like he needed just a little bit more, right? I was waiting for him to really take over the game, and I think he played an excellent game, but he never really just got to a point where he said, hey, give me the damn ball and get the hell out the way.
Yeah, it seemed more like he was a star of the game, but he wasn't the superstar people were expecting. I mean, 20 and 10, you can't really say those are bad stats, but yeah, you look at the other side. I mean, I think I may have talked about Bako or Bakat. We got to figure out how to pronounce it. But I think I mentioned last game, the game before this Duke game, he had 23 boards. So, I mean, he's one of the best rebounders in the country. And when you're facing a guy like that, you just have to put bodies on him. And that might mean more than one body. And it showed, and it hurt Duke late in that game with offensive boards and just everything that he was doing defensively, offensively. It was a real game changer, along with Caleb Love doing what he was doing on the offensive end. But I mean, UNC just they looked like the better team that game. I know there were some questionable calls that people weren't too happy about towards Duke's side, but I mean, it's basketball. At some point, you're gonna miss some calls. There's calls missed the whole game. We'll see a lot of Baycott. Okay, so it is Baycott. So we're seeing a lot of Baycott fans in the chat right now, but yeah, it's gonna be tough, I think, for Kansas to match up against those two. I mean, especially seeing what they did the past two games. The guy's averaging 22 boards in the last two games, and you have Caleb Love, who he can pull up, he can drive to the basket, he can cross you up. I mean, he can do everything on the court, and he can pass. So Caleb Love is going to be a hard guy to stop, along with Baycott. So it's going to be a tough game for Kansas. I really think, especially with UNC on this roll right now. So it's going to be a good one. I think I'm going to end up going UNC as my team to win. Who do you got?
I'm also going with UNC, but I will say this about Caleb Love. Since the tournament started, I mean, he has just had a rough time stringing two good games together. I mean, it seems like he's Michael Jordan one night and then back to being Caleb Love the night after. I mean, he has 28, but he was coming off a 14-point game where he shot 6 for 17. But the game before that, he goes for 30, against UCLA. But the game before that, he goes 1 for 6 and has 5 points against Baylor.
Yeah.
So if he could string two good games together for the first time all tournament, I don't think it's going to be that close, unless, of course, Kansas just comes out and shoots like they did against Villanova. And at this time of the year, like in any sport, it's not about who's the best; it's about who's playing the best.
Yeah, I actually think Kansas might have to do that. I think because if you're missing, especially on the offensive, even if you're missing no matter what, you're not coming back with that board, especially with Baycott on the floor. So it's gonna be an interesting game. It's just hard. It's hard to go against the team that is at least the 8 seed right now, that is running through everyone, just ran through Duke. And I know like they got a lot of guys on that team that can score. I mean, RJ Davis, I'm pretty sure, had 4 fouls in the first 10 minutes of the game, and they were still pretty good the whole game. So they got guys, even if they got in foul trouble, they can come off the bench. I mean, my favorite name of the whole tournament, Puff Johnson. Love to see him come off the bench. But I mean, who do you got on the Kansas side? They don't have as deep of a bench, I think. I mean, you got you got Lightfoot off the bench, but really other than that, you don't have anybody coming off. And I know last game does not show well for UNC, at least, because they played Love and Baycott pretty much the entire game, it seems like. But that's also what you got to do in the tournament. You got to play your best guys at the best time, but it's going to be interesting to see if they can stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah, Kansas had 5 bench points against Villanova, which is disappointing because they bring in Remy Martin, the transfer from Arizona State, who was such an electric player at Arizona State, and he gives them almost nothing in the biggest game of the year. Now, luckily, they shot 54% from 3, so it didn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about real quick the other side of the UNC Duke game. It was Coach K's last game. I mean, he's one of the best, if not the best, to ever do it. I mean, I know a lot of people would say he is the best. I mean, just you go up and down the accolades for him, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's 15-30 win seasons, the winningest coach of all time in college basketball. He got gold medals attached to it. I mean, is there a better coach in the NBA, or not the NBA, in the basketball world that you've seen that's retired already or out there now that you think could either catch Coach K or past him while they were coaching?
In terms of like the actual numbers, it is going to be hard to catch him because he was there for like 40 years. I think if anyone has a shot, it's going to be Jay Wright. Already 2 titles, already I think like 31 tournament wins. Obviously didn't go his way last night, but I mean, Villanova's just trotting out not the best team in the world, but like a top 10 roster, and they play like a top 5 team. So in terms of like who's doing more with less, guys like Jay Wright, I remember like when I first got into sports, this wasn't the narrative around Coach K. And he's only won 1 more championship since that time. I think what's really done it is that his players that go to the next level are actually good now, right? Grant Hill never turned to what he was supposed to because of the injuries. Same with Jay Williams. But like J.J. Redick and Shane Battier became starting caliber players. Leitner became an all-star at like 30 years old, I think. But now, right, Kyrie, Brandon Ingram, Jason Tatum. I think both of us think R.J. Barrett at some point is going to be an all-star.
Yeah.
I'm definitely forgetting so many more. I mean, and that is with the 2015 team that won the title, all busting. The best player on that team in the NBA is Grayson Allen, or like Tyus Jones, maybe.
Yeah, and that's the other part is it kind of sucks because you see all these players that come out and people say, oh well, he had all these great players, just like how they say with Calipari over in Kentucky. He has all these great players. It's just because they have the great players. Well, the difference is Coach K would get far year after year after year. Calipari will have 5 guys who are going to be all-stars on a team at once and still not go very far. And I'm seeing a comment right now, Coach K is one of the greatest of all, in all sports, not just basketball. I was going to ask you also, I saw a lot of times throughout Coach K's career, he got offers for the NBA. He got Celtics, Portland, a couple other teams. I believe even a couple other teams though. Throughout 30 years he was there, 25 years he was there. He got a lot of offers. Do you think that his style? You think he would have been a great coach in the NBA, or you think it was just one of those college basketball type coaches?
Some guys in all sports are meant to be college coaches, right? I mean, who would have thought that Nick Saban's a below 500 coach in the NFL, right? Who would have thought that Nick Saban's defense in Cleveland, who was the coordinator, was garbage, right? Who would have thought that? Not you or me when you watch Alabama play, but that's just how it is. And a lot of it comes back to you cannot talk to grown men the way you talk to children, right?
Yep.
It is really easy when I control your life with a scholarship, right? And you, like 3 months ago, you had to ask to go to the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
Versus when you're making $25 million and your house is double the size of mine, right? It's just not the same. Coach K could not talk to LeBron James the way he talks to like Christian Laettner. It just wouldn't have worked. It's a comment on the screen, Urban Meyer. I mean, with Urban Meyer, he doesn't talk to anyone the right way. You shouldn't talk the way he talks to anybody. You don't kick kickers. I think Urban is the shining example of that, right? He might even be the outlier. I think the perfect example is Nick Saban, right? Probably the greatest college football coach of all time, below average coach in the NFL, right? And This is with, like, I don't know if you watched the I Am an Athlete podcast with Channing Crowder and Brandon Marshall and all them. They talk about how Nick Saban would come to you in a meeting and be like, hey, when they line up this way, the screen's going that way. But he'd say it like, well, they're going to throw the screen and you're not going to tackle them because you're not any good and they're going to score. But if you can, we're going to win, right? Like, he's a genius, but he's just such an ass. It just doesn't work with grown men.
Yeah, you see it all the time. I mean, NFL, you see it more than basketball. But yeah, I mean, it is a lot different. I mean, you're going from your job being recruiting and coaching to it's pretty much all coaching in the NBA. So I maybe wouldn't say Coach K would have been bad necessarily. I just don't think he would have been Coach K in the NBA. Nobody would have been like, oh, he's nowadays people would be like, oh, he's retiring. And they wouldn't have made a big deal. I don't think he would have been that great of a coach in the NBA. Maybe more of like a Jason Kidd type coach where he's a good coach. I mean, Jason Kidd, I don't know if Jason Kidd's the best.
Getting passed around.
Yeah, I don't know if Jason Kidd's the best example. But like you see all these coaches come in from college and they're all right coaches, but they're not going to take their team to the next level. And I don't know if Coach K would have done that in the NBA, especially with how you see how vocal he is on the sidelines, how upset he gets on the sidelines. And if you're getting upset and NBA players, a lot of times, like you said, they're not going to respond well. So, I mean, it's great to see what Coach K did there. It's fun to say, oh, what if he did go to the NBA? But I mean, you look at the accolades, you can't really argue that he is the greatest college basketball coach, at least in my mind, of all time. Even though I can't stand Duke, so
Neither can I. Can't stand him.
can't stand him.
Best moment of this year for me was getting to see my Seminoles beat Duke this year. Coach K's last game at the Tuck Center, and Seminoles got the win by 1.
Yeah, well, now Coach K is riding off into the sunset. And I do actually want to talk about one more thing with this game. I noticed not a lot of the Duke guys shook UNC's hand at the end of the game. What are your thoughts just on that? Just real quick.
We talked about it. Coach K is a great coach. He's a bad dude, right? He's not a pleasant individual. He's a massive hypocrite with a lot of the things he says, a lot of the stances he takes. And a lot of these great guys have terrible sportsmanship. You know, Tom Brady has terrible sportsmanship. He doesn't shake hands after losses. I know a couple Duke players, made sure to shake hands, which was cool. I know shaking hands is a big focal point this year in college basketball because of the Michigan Juwan Howard thing. It was unfortunate because, it's your rival. You have to see them again. You didn't lose to, I'd be mad if I lost to St. Peter's. Sure, I might storm off the court. But this is your rival. They're a good team. They might be the national champions. They were the national champions 3 years ago, right? Hey, you guys went on a court. The better team won at the end of the day. It was a good game, right? It was a good battle. There's no cheap shots, nothing like that. There was no reason to walk off the court.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's just, I mean, I find it very hard to ever say that it's okay to walk off the court. Obviously, there are those very rare occasions that not shaking the opponent's hand might be reasonable, might have a good reason behind it. But yeah, this one, I mean, it's Coach K's last game. Make him look the best possible. Go shake their hands, and then go in the locker room and then let your emotions out or whatever it is. But yeah, just one of those things I saw at the end of the game. Don't love to see it. Need to be better there, but yeah, North Carolina and Kansas moving on.
Should be a fun game tomorrow.
Yep. All right. Do you want to get into then right now talking about the good old Lakers? I mean, I don't know how much more we can really say about them, but see right there.
We had the thing up. It's actually, but as we were talking, their game against the Nuggets finished. They lost. So they're actually 31-47, a game and a half out of the 10 seed. And by the way, the games they got left, they got the Nuggets again, they got the Suns, they got the Warriors, and they got the Thunder. I could easily see them going 1-3, which means all the Spurs have to do is go 1-3, and they're in. And I think the Spurs have a much lighter road. I wish I could say, well, it's the LeBron injury, right? Well, no, because they're 25-31 with LeBron, right? The team's not good, right? No one knows more than LeBron James, right? And Frank Vogel, because he's been in many conference championships with the Pacers. The NBA season is a grind. It is 82 games. You cannot expect a bunch of guys in their 30s, plus Anthony Davis, who's been injured every single year since he got to LA, to make it through that. And I mean, they're running on fumes right now. It takes Herculean efforts from LeBron and Anthony Davis for some of these games to even be close, right? No LeBron today. They gave up 130 points to the Nuggets. They gave up 105 in the final 3 quarters.
Yeah.
To just Nicole. Remember, the Nuggets are doing this without Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. The team isn't that good, and they just ran the Lakers out of the gym. I believe it was in LA too.
Yep.
Just nothing they've tried to throw at the wall has stuck this year. I think it's not going to be a huge indictment on LeBron's legacy if they miss the playoffs this year. We talked about the team isn't good, but I would like him to not potentially airball the 3 to tie the game against the Pelicans, and of all teams, the Pelicans, because we know the history between those two, right? Now, many of the guys LeBron traded to the Pelicans aren't there anymore, right? Lonzo's in Chicago, Josh Hart is in Portland, but the number one piece of that trade was Brandon Ingram. And Brandon Ingram's blossomed into an all-star, a great scorer, and what a game he had.
Oh yeah, I mean it's unfortunate to see a team that at least in my mind, has a lot of guys you'd want to at least root for. Like I'd love to see Melo get one. I personally would love to see Russ get one. I mean, it's tough to see because of the fact that yes, they are an old team. They are one of the oldest teams in the league. I mean, you have your youngest guy is Austin Reeves, and he's maybe the only one that's under 23, maybe.
And Frank Vogel's not playing him anymore.
Yeah, and it's all of a sudden it's not even just that they're bad. It's that they don't even know how to work well together. It's everybody thought this was going to gel. When I first saw this, even if Russ was the same player that he once was, how is this working? Because of the fact that Russ is that guy that just likes to go crazy and run, and then you're going to pair him with two guys in their 30s coming off injuries that you can tell are starting to slow down a little bit in AD and LeBron. It just didn't make too much sense to me. And now, of course, you're here. I didn't think it would be this bad. But yeah, I mean, it's horrible. And then talking about those last 4 games, one of those games are at home, and it's against the Thunder. So you're going to have to go to Phoenix.
And which, by the way, I think they've lost to the Thunder like twice this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Knicks on the other side. It's like, how can you go from having this team that is supposed to be title contenders, maybe the Knicks weren't title contenders, but they were playoff contenders, to being just absolute, I mean, garbage. They are garbage. They are one of the worst teams in the league. And if it wasn't for LeBron and if it wasn't for AD, I know AD has been up and down playing this season because he's been hurt just like with LeBron. But if it wasn't for them, I really would wonder then what their record would be. Because this, I think, would be the worst. If you even take one of those two guys off this team, I think it's the worst team in the NBA.
They're bad.
And
there's no sugarcoating it.
I mean, yeah, they're one of their best scorers is a 37-year-old Melo or 36-year-old Melo. And I mean, that's not a knock on Melo. It's just he's getting old. He's not the same scorer he once was.
Honestly, because the injuries to AD and LeBron, Carmelo Anthony has been the constant force on this team. He's been the most consistent player on the team, which since Melo left New York has not been the case. Like Melo had his share of like 3 for 19 nights back when he was really good, but like it was fine. It was Melo. He had to take bailout shots. Since then, Melo has had his 3 for 19 nights. Like he's not always on. He's very much a rhythm player, right? But he has been like the most consistent thing the Lakers have had all year. It's sad.
And it's, I mean, now Melo's one of those guys. Exactly. You want to see him win. You want to see him get a ring. He deserves a ring. He's a Hall of Famer. Hall of Famers, in my opinion, every Hall of Famer deserves a ring. Obviously, not every Hall of Famer can get one. It's just how it is. But Melo is one of those guys where he was fun to watch. He never really got publicly off the court issues. Never really had too many of those. I mean, in Denver, he had some minor issues. In New York, I mean, but even in New York, he was only ever talked about for dropping 50 points, 40 points in MSG. I mean, he was never really talked about with his off the field or off the court issues, and he's just one of those guys that he's one of the greatest scorers ever in the NBA, and you'd love to see him get a ring, and it's tough to watch him waste the last year, maybe one of his last years. Don't know if this is his last year on this type of team, and it really is not looking like they're going to make the playoffs unless LeBron decides to go absolute God mode these last 4 games and average 70 points.
That's not even enough anymore.
Oh yeah, I mean,
he's got to do it on offense. He's got to take break on, and he's not the same player on defense he used to be, even when he's going, full at it anymore. For a team that was supposed to be this hard-nosed defensive team, they don't defend.
Oh yeah, and it is tough to watch. Obviously, I know I've talked about it before with LeBron not getting back on defense, but again, people forget these guys. He's 37. He may not always play like he's 37. Like he may look like he's still 29 playing wise, but physically up and down that court, he's 37, 38, whatever. I mean, he's not going to physically be able to do it night in and night out. And it's just, it's really tough to watch. It's not even like enjoyable watching this team play. Honestly, it reminds me of the Devin Booker Suns when he was dropping 70 and nobody else could do a thing and they were still losing. It's tough to watch, and you don't really know where you go either after this. Like, where do you go with this? You don't have picks. 80s, injury prone and old. You're not going to get as much out of him as you once would. Who's going to do anything? I mean, do you trade LeBron? Nobody wants Russ. I mean, it's going to be a lot of interesting questions with this team, and it's really looking rough now.
They're going to have to answer so many questions this offseason, regardless of what happens. Because, I mean, even if they go on some magical run, get to the play-in and win the title, I mean, there's people are still going to look at like, sure, we won, but this team sucks. Like, it just flat out sucks. Again, You talked about Melo. I think Melo should sign with his boy Chris Paul in Phoenix for 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it.
One more banana boat tour.
Oh, yeah. All right. Do we want to get into the next topic?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right. Next up, we're going to talk about a little bit about Robert Williams and Ben Simmons. But first, let's get into Robert Williams. Big blow for my Celtics. It looked worse and sounded worse initially, but now, like it says, he did begin rehab right after the surgery. The official timeline was 4 to 6 weeks, but according to Woj, the Time Lord himself could be back in 4 weeks or less. So I mean, it's looking like we might not lose him as long as we thought, but it's still a huge blow because of the fact that the difference this guy makes on the defensive end is unbelievable, and it gets better. It's gotten better every year since I've watched him, and it's showing even now. These past few games without him, maybe not today's game because they blew him out, but the past few games, they didn't really have that presence down there that they really, really need. So what are your thoughts on Robert Williams being out, and how much will it affect the Celtics once the playoffs start?
I think in terms of their quest to get like the 1 or the 2 seed, I know we talked about they're the 2. I think they're actually the 3 right now because Milwaukee won the other night. And I think even with the Celtics winning today, I think Milwaukee still might be 2. Robert Williams, second in the NBA in blocks, one of the best defensive pieces in the NBA. And I think he's such an athletic freak, with the length, the way he can move. I wouldn't bring him back to his 100% because he's a great defensive player, but 80% of Robert Williams is something I got to change my game plan for because their defense is just so good with him and Horford down there with Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown. It's crazy that I think Jason Tatum's about an average to slightly above average defender, and he's the worst defensive player in their starting lineup. Like, they can defend with anybody in the league, but it changes if he's hampered, right? I'd rather have him out than playing hampered and also risking re-injury because that is a guy you're going to need if you want to contend with, Miami and Philly and, of course, the Nets and Milwaukee. That's the big one, right? Because he's probably going to be the guy that you have matched up with Giannis. I want him healthy for that matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as I wouldn't rush him, obviously the playoffs start very, very soon. You probably won't need him for round 1. I mean, the only it is going to be against those teams that you'll really, really need the defense. But how many teams are you really, really going to need it against? Probably Miami because they're another great defensive team. You're going to need it against Milwaukee because they have Giannis, Embiid, and Philly maybe, but there's not too many teams up and down that I can look at and say it's going to absolutely hurt, like it's going to really hurt us in that series. But yeah, I think they'll be fine for the first round. Second round, I don't think you bring them back until it's an elimination game. That's the way I put it. Unless it's the second or third round with an elimination, you keep him on the sideline, let him rest, especially because he's so young and this team is so young. You're going to have other years if it's not this year. And I know people always say, well, you don't want to lose your timeline, whatever.
He's 24.
Let's not forget, Robert Williams is 24. Tatum, I believe, is even younger, if not just slightly around the same age. Jaylen Brown, 26. I mean, the only really old guys you got are Horford, who, all right, we probably should replace him soon. Marcus Smart's getting up there, but Marcus Smart doesn't really do anything except for play defense. I mean, I know he puts the ball in the bucket here and there, and it's certain nights, but he reminds me a lot of Draymond, like a guard version of Draymond. He'll do everything else, and occasionally he'll go off on offense, but he's not very often. So I don't think it hurts the Celtics too much. I mean, it's tough to see. The first reaction, obviously, them saying he's going to be out for a long, long time really didn't look good, but now saying he could be back within the 4 weeks, I mean, that's terrific news. So Celtics fans, I wouldn't worry too much.
No, and the other side of this, Ben Simmons, right? As a lot of people saying Ben Simmons won't play this year because he had the setback with the back. I think the Nets desperately need Ben Simmons. The other night, Kevin Durant scored 55 points. Kyrie Irving scored 31. No one else scored more than 9, right? And there's a lot of guys now who average more assists than normal because there's so many possessions now. You're going to get more assists. Doesn't mean they're good playmakers. The Nets don't really have any like guys who can create for others except maybe Kyrie, right? Kevin Durant's a scorer. Like that's what he is. He puts the ball in the bucket. So Ben Simmons' role on offense, be a legitimate point guard, and any defense he's on transforms if he's healthy. Now, of course, if Ben Simmons is dealing with laboring back pain, he's not the same 6'10 physical freak athlete that he normally is. Then again, another guy I probably wouldn't rush back because look, even if the Nets, get the 7th spot and they'll play like Milwaukee or Boston or Miami, I mean, this still might not be their year. Like they have Kevin Durant and Kyrie, but the rest of the roster, again, like some other teams, it's old. There's no athletes. I mean, Blake gave him a little bit of a surge last year, but it's looking like he's kind of cooked.
Yeah, and the only other guy I can really think of on that bench is Kessler there, and he's really the only guy that can put the ball in the bucket. I know he's had a couple 30-point games this year. He's been that guy that kind of shocked everyone. But yeah, you're gonna need that. You're also gonna need Ben Simmons, like you said, on the defensive side. He's 6'10". He can guard anyone. He can guard the perimeter. He can guard the post. Maybe not like Joel Embiid type guy in the post, but he can guard a Tatum. He can guard a LeBron in the post, even though we're not going to see him in the playoffs. But he can guard those types of forwards in the post, like Brandon Ingram, whoever it is. So, yeah, don't rush him back. There's really no need. You guys, they've been playing together all year already. I think it would only mess things up more if you all of a sudden tried to insert him and he was hurt, because of the fact that now you're trying to get the chemistry going on top of Ben Simmons is still hurt. So it's going to be interesting. I know they did say he received a shot to relieve some of the pain from the herniated disc. But a lot of people are still saying he's not going to return at all this season. So we'll see with Ben Simmons. It's been a big mess. I don't know if it will ever end with Ben Simmons' career. But yeah, that's Ben Simmons for you.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to get into go around the block right now and search for
a new name in the top 5 this week?
Yes, new name. I know it's kind of tough for us to get different guys in this list when we have guys putting up the numbers they are. But we do have somebody that I'm very excited to talk about. Or actually, I think you're going to talk about him. But I'm very excited to hear him get the recognition he needs. But first, we'll go to number 5. We're going to go with good old Trae Young, New York Knick killer, guy who just probably most hated guy in New York right now. But you look at those stats. Obviously, Pacers rough game shooting wise, but look at the 16 assists. I mean, the guy can do it all on offense. He can score, he can pass. I mean, he's averaged lowest is 8 assists per game, or 8 assists out of his whole span. But 36 points, 30 points, 41. And again, I know these aren't the best teams, which kind of dropped him, but he's been doing it all. And he's really now leading that Hawks team to some big wins that they need real bad. And who knows, maybe he's on another watch to make a short little run in the East there. But Trae Young coming in number 5.
Yeah, another late season surge for the Hawks. Been fun to watch.
Yep.
Now, our new name is sitting at number 4. And it's, we talked about, hey, the Warriors window is back open because they drafted, Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody and James Wiseman. But lo and behold, it's none of those guys that is saving their spot in the Western Conference right now. It's Jordan Poole. The late, I don't think he was a lottery pick, right? Definitely not.
I do not believe he was.
No, and I think he has like 14 straight 20-point games. I mean, you look at it, the Wizards, 26 and 6. And that was on a bad shooting night too, and with 3 steals. And then he goes against the Grizzlies, right? Second best team in the Western Conference. 25 points, 5 rebounds again. And then against the Suns, the best team in the NBA by a country mile, he goes damn near 40 with 9 rebounds and 7 assists. Now, I believe they lost that game, and he took a questionable shot there towards the end. But, man, for like 47 and a half minutes, Jordan Poole was the best player on the court. And then he caps it on again, big comeback win against the Jazz, 31.6 rebounds, 6 assists, doing all this without Steph Curry, and also doing it while playing point guard, right? He was a shooting guard at Michigan, came into the NBA as a 2 guard. Remember, he hit that game winner, I believe it was against Houston in March Madness a couple years ago, and he had his big hair flowing everywhere. Well, now he's got a haircut, position change, and here he is turning into one of the stories of the second half of the season.
Yeah, he's been an absolute monster. I know a lot of people had high hopes for him coming into the year, and I think he surpassed a lot of them. And it looks like the Warriors might have their guy of the future once Steph and Clay decide to hang it up. Who knows? But yeah, and looking at it, he was the 28th pick in the 2019 draft. So he was almost a second rounder. I mean, this guy, it's amazing sometimes to see how off they are with rating these guys or whatever it is, certain things. But yeah, Jordan Poole. I mean, I think the other great part about it is, I mean, you look right there, 6 and 7 threes made in the games against the Jazz and the Suns. He's doing it everywhere. So that's the even crazier part to me. So yeah, Jordan Poole, number 4. I hope it's not the only time we see him on this list. But all right, number 3, we're back to a guy that we have had before, and we'll probably have arguably the rest of the season. But I mean, you can't not put him out there, and it's Luka Doncic. Still my MVP. It's still not really that. I mean, there's still obviously Giannis is catching up to him, but he's still my MVP. Look at what he's doing. 32, 36, 35, 32. You'd think those are how many minutes he's playing in the game. No, it's not. It's he's just averaging 30 over the past week. He's been doing it almost the whole season. And look at the assists. Along with the assists, like he's averaging double-digit assists in the past week with averaging 30 points. And he's almost averaged 10 rebounds per game. I mean, you can't really, and he's a point guard also. I mean, I know he's taller than most point guards, but still, I mean, what he's doing this year is amazing. It amazes me every time I watch him, especially watching that team play. I mean, it's all him. So it's just amazing to watch. Luka Doncic, number 3.
He's been unreal this year. And our top 3 is, again, I think all the guys in our top 3 this week are probably going to finish top 5 in MVP voting. Going on to my next guy, it is an MVP, a former MVP at least. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. And just, again, like, we don't even marvel. And he's not, the only reason he's not number 1 is because he missed a game. We don't even marvel at these numbers anymore because he's just Giannis. It's just what he does. But let's read them off. 40 and 14 with 6 assists, a steal and 3 blocks. 44 and 14, 6 assists with a steal, and then missed the game against the Clippers. And then he comes out against, the other guy on this list, Luka Doncic, and he goes, this is his low game of the week, 28 and 10 with 2 assists and 2 steals. He's their best player on offense, he's their best player on defense. He is, I would argue, the most unstoppable force in the NBA right now. One of the most unstoppable forces in sports. He's a joy to watch. I mean, he's a fun guy. Love rooting for him. We talked about how the American guys really can't get behind the fact that Giannis is the dude right now. But he is the dude. Like, he owns the NBA right now, defending champs. If I had to, gun to my head right now, you had to make me pick the Eastern Conference again, I'd lean towards the Bucks, because when it comes down to it, these are the type of guys that take their teams out of the conference, and he is that guy.
Oh, yeah, he's looking like he's ramping up and getting ready for another big playoff run, another championship run. And, I mean, we'll be seeing this for the next 10 to 15, maybe 15 years. But we're going to be seeing it for a while. But coming in at number 1 is another foreign player. It's Nikola Jokic. And I know we've talked about him before. He's starting to learn his lesson, not shooting as many threes, not going 0 for 8, 0 for 9 in threes anymore, whatever. But, I mean, look at this line. 29, 15, 4 with 3 steals and a block. And then you got 38, 19 and 8, 37, 13 and 9, 26, 19, 11. I mean, the guy's averaging 17 boards, 16 boards a night, along with over 30 points a game. I mean, as you said, he's leading this Nuggets team. He doesn't have Jamal Murray. He doesn't have Michael Porter Jr. And he's still somehow leading this team. Come from behind win today against the Lakers. Obviously, it's the Lakers, not the best team. But still, I mean, you beat the Hornets. I believe they beat the Hornets, who are one of the hottest teams right now. I know they've been starting to heat up. The Pacers, who are a very young, energetic team. The Timberwolves, I believe they whooped the Timberwolves. But what he's doing is unbelievable, and he's just going to be right there again in the mix for the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go on be talking about like 5 straight foreign-born MVPs. You know, it's great for the growth of the game. I'm super happy to see that.
Yep, yeah, and I think my top 3 right now would have to be the exact top 3 that we said in a different order. I'd just go swap 1 and 3, or put Luka, Giannis, and then Jokic. I think Embiid's kind of fallen off my top 3 there, but yeah, I mean it's 3 foreign players that are in the MVP race, and one of them I think should win it. So yeah, that's that for our top 5 of the week, and that'll do it for us. And we will pass it back to Matt for, I believe it is hockey.
Baseball.
Baseball. So we will be back next week. Any last word, Tim?
Heat's still number 1 in the East, so let's just please not get the Nets in the first round, and I'll see you next week, dude.
Yep, see you next week.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. That was great. Got Shane on here now. We're going to talk some baseball. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Unfortunately, my normal co-host, Evan, wherever you're at right now, hopefully you're able to listen. He's not able to be on for the next couple of weeks. It's probably just me, and some occasional other guests here for a little while. But
anything to get the news out, you know?
Yeah, well, it's gonna be hard to follow basketball, especially that was a lot to talk about between March Madness and the NBA playoffs about to start. So we're about to start talking about actual baseball shortly. But
I mean, dude, next week it starts, and we're off, and we already got some injuries to talk about. So I'll let you go ahead and bring that up.
Yeah, so that's unfortunately. I want to start this off because I don't want to end on a low note. I want to kind of get it out of the way. Not surprising, unfortunately, but it's still unfortunate. Jacob deGrom for the Mets, top starting pitcher, maybe in all of baseball, definitely at least with the Mets, going to be out for at least a month with a stress fracture in his scapula. Just the guy cannot avoid injuries, and it's so unfortunate because he's been one of the most dominant players in the sport over the past 6-7 years. Really, ever since he came up, he's been fantastic. And outside of injuries, there's really nothing that's been able to stop him from just dominating his competition. And Scherzer, you'll see there too. He also has a minor injury, luckily, but I wanted to bring that up because there's a good chance the Mets have neither of their 2 top starting pitchers to start the season. And Scherzer, luckily, probably not going to be anything major. Maybe just miss his first start or 2 starts, but they don't really have a lot of depth behind those 2. They're 3, 4, 5 guys. Are not guys that are going to be able to headline a rotation for any extended period of time. So, got to have Scherzer back. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say too. I mean, like you said, it being the start of the season, it's especially what has happened this offseason with, is there going to even be a season? Just the moves that have been made too. You got to think after all that, you want to make sure your club has a hot start, and you want to. And I understand it's such a long season, so many games to go through. Even if you do start off like not great, you can always have your runs mid-season towards the end. You have time. But I think this time around, it's just that scenario of, like you said, 2 starting guys not going to be there. It says something about the positivity in your club, in your locker room. Where are we going to go from this? Like, are we just going to sit here and wait? Because if they don't win their first couple series, or at least show that they can keep up without their star guys, it could get pretty ugly pretty fast. And then even when they come back, they're going to rely so much on those 2.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity they can look at it, though, I will say, to see what you have in your other guys, right? Yeah. Because right now they're going to have to rely on at least one guy who wasn't going to be near the top of the rotation with deGrom out for at least a month. And it's likely realistically, it's going to be longer than that. They're going to reevaluate him in 4 weeks, but between his history and just this injury in general, with it being a stress thing that could really get bad if it doesn't get better soon, they could not have him for 2-3 months. Realistically, that's probably the more likely timeline. So even if he comes back, like you said, are you going to be in contention? Are you going to be able to say, okay, well, let's bring him back, make sure he can actually, because you might just get shut down at some point in the season if they're not winning enough.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, like you said, talk or look at what you have outside of your stars.
Right.
But at the same time, especially for what they've been doing the past couple of years, they kind of want to get on that hot streak and stay up there, and they don't want to lose momentum. And I just don't know if necessarily baseball is a sport where you can rely on these young bucks, at least to get you going at the start of a season. You need that mentor. You need those mentors, those extra special guys that are going to be able to win you a couple games, especially at their position. It is just a really big heartbreaker for the all Mets fans out there, and I feel for you. And I mean, if anything, you got to dig deep. But at the end of the day, yes, you want to see what you have, but you want to start off hot so bad.
Right.
I mean, everybody's been waiting for this, and now that it's finally back, and they don't have them, it's tough.
And the most unfortunate thing too is not only for Mets fans but for baseball fans, getting to see these two guys at the top of rotation.
Oh gosh,
it was on every top 5 list of things to be excited about this year. I mean, two guys who have been some of the best at their position for a while now, on the same team, frontlining rotation, and we're not going to see it at least for, like I said, a month. And even Scherzer, like I said, he's not going to start the season, so it's just a downer for everybody. Like, I think even non-Mets fans were just curious, like, how good of a rotation could they have, which even just those two really being the headliners.
I'll tell you, man, just being any type of a sports fan, when you lose your players in whatever position, it's what it could be or what it could have been, but they'll have to persevere and get through it, just like a lot of clubs do each and every year. But I mean, to have two of them, it's
unfortunate with DeGrom, because like they're used to it, unfortunately, kind of the story with him. Like I said, injuries, but it's not for good. Like, it doesn't make it any better, right? It's just something that they were hoping that wouldn't have to deal with after. I mean, he had such an incredible start to last year until he got hurt in July and kind of was shut down the rest of the season. And I just want to see a full season of the current DeGrom that's really unlocked even more velocity and all this other just special talents that he has that we didn't get to see a full season of yet. I want to at least see 1 or 2 of those seasons before he gets up there in age. So
I agree.
Hoping he comes back strong at the end of the season. But then we also had one of the better reliever prospects or guys has been one of just the guys that throw 100 miles an hour. One of the top guys doing that with the White Sox right now, Garrett Crochet. One of the more unique situations, because he came right from college a couple years ago and came right in and was a reliever for them for, I think it was near the end of the season. And you don't see that very often, especially in baseball. I mean, guys, even senior players in college or juniors, they normally take a year or 2 to get acclimated, but he got thrown right in the mix and done a good job for them, and probably was going to contend for some starts down the season, see if he could stretch out and be a starter. And Tommy John surgery, going to be out for at least a calendar year, if not more, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Anytime you get an injury like that, it's got to be just so mind-boggling to that individual too, just to be like, okay, look at what I did do last year. Look at how I got here. When, like you said, everybody usually takes time. They have to. It's just the way that baseball works. But for him and his story, which was so unique and just really fun for if you're a baseball fan in general to watch happen, and then you see him go out. Now you're like, I mean, is he going to be able to come back? Was it a 1-year thing? Like, you don't know. You don't know. And, you really do feel for those types of, when those injuries happen, you feel for those athletes.
Yeah. And the good news is Tommy John isn't nearly as big of a deal as it was 10 years ago, even. So, like, the hope is that it won't really have any long-term effects on his career. But this is a guy still trying to find his role in Major League Baseball, and having that come up now with a team that is trying to compete with the White Sox. It's just going to add to that timeline of, how long is it going to take?
Especially when you're young too, you know, you're like, okay, my body will heal. I'll get back to where I'm at. But it's just the scenario you're put in, the situation you're in.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that's all mental right there. That comes down to just being like, don't get too negative, because if you're gonna start doing the why me, that could lead to a lot of bad things. So hopefully he's got a good team around him that keep in touch with him and say, hey, look at what you did, and even though this is a minor setback, you'll come back and you'll get right back into it. So nothing but prayers going his way. And like I said, just it sucks for baseball fans. Like, you just want to see this play.
Yeah, especially a guy that has the electric fastball, and everything like he has going for him. Like, you just hope, like you said, that the timeline too, because of how long Tommy John put you out for, it's just a grueling time period to know that you're not gonna be able to do anything for multiple months, and then it's months of, can you get your arm back into shape and get everything moving where it feels good. And it's just a process that you hope that it's only a 1-year thing basically, and you can see him next year. But there's been guys that, even just as talented as him, that never come back fully. So we're hoping that doesn't happen for him.
True. All right. Well, we've got top 10 players in baseball, and I think you've got the list this time around. So
yeah, I wanted to make sure before the season starts that I kind of throw out the guys that
absolutely.
The guys that I'm looking at who I think are the top 10 players expected to be this year. And there's a couple guys who are going to be farther down this list than I would normally have them, but they're not going to start the season initially. So and DeGrom is in this category. He's actually off my list this year just because I'm worried he might miss 2-3 months. Like, that's the expectation.
And at least he'll miss time to the point where you can't factor in his performance into a list, which 100%. I think a lot of, you look outside of baseball, just a lot of these, sports podcasts, the TV shows that do their rankings, and you're like, but that guy hasn't played. He played maybe 4 games, or that guy played that many more games. I get where you're coming from, but give it to me though. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, you got to factor in, what you expect from them the year that you're ranking them, right? And so, because I know DeGrom's missing time, I can't. So until told otherwise or shown otherwise, outside of him also getting hurt again this year, Mike Trout's obviously number 1 player in baseball still for me. I mean, he's one of the most gifted hitters and just players the sport's ever seen. I think that's not controversial to say at this point. He has done as much as you possibly can individually up to this point in his career. It's just going to be, can he get any accolades from team success, which hopefully, there's another guy on this list that'll hopefully help him do it this year. But in general, there's not much he has left to prove as a baseball player other than just longevity, and hopefully the injuries don't catch up with him like we saw last year. But prior to his injury there last year, just as good of a player as ever. And outside of maybe having to move into a corner outfield spot later on in his career or something, there's nothing that's going to change that with him right now. So
I'm right there with you. Right there with you.
Kind of hard to argue with that. And then Juan Soto actually has my number 2. Now, a lot of people I've seen many people not liking him inside the top 5 just because he isn't the prototypical, like, flashy player, and he's not a great defender. He's a good one, but not a great defender. But he's just such a good hitter, and maybe the most complete hitter to come in baseball, maybe since Trout started, and even probably more so just as a complete hitter than Trout. Not as much pure power as some other guys on this list, but just when it comes to on base percentage, getting the ball in play, not really striking out a ton, like everything that you can do to impact the game positively as a hitter, he does it at an elite level. And that trumps kind of everything that you might not like about the fact that he's not the most flashy guy, or he's not a speed threat, any of that. So he makes my number 2 right now. Then we got number 3, and I wanted to put this guy at 2 or even maybe 1 just because of the value he brings, because of the fact he's a special player in the sense that it doesn't just hit for you, he pitches for you. It's Shohei Ohtani, of course, reigning MVP in the AL. I'm putting him in 3rd just because I want to see him do it again, obviously, because we've never seen anybody do quite what he did last year. And if he can repeat his performance as a pitcher especially, and even if he doesn't hit quite as well, maybe the power numbers don't translate.
It's always hard, especially at that position, to stay on top, right? And I feel like in baseball, you have an opportunity to have more like one-year seasons that are just
there's a lot,
tremendous, and then it's what happened to that guy.
It's just a tough sport to play well consistently, and just because it's just one of the hardest sports to just learn how to play, period, let alone be great at it. So
absolutely.
But being able to do what he does though as a pitcher, like if he can continue to be a big time strikeout guy and limit runs like he did last year while maybe even improving as a hitter, because down the stretch he had less. He didn't get on base as much. He was pretty much just a pure power guy. If he can even out as to like a 275, 290 average guy and keep his on base percentage high, even if he doesn't hit 40, 50 bombs, it won't matter as much because he's going to have guys setting him up like Trout and stuff like that. So if he's anything like last year, he's probably going to end up being considered the best player, probably going to be an MVP candidate again, but just want to see it from him the second year. And a guy that I have higher than also a lot of people that I've seen or a lot of rankings is Mookie Betts from the Dodgers at 4. He is one of the best defenders I've seen in the outfield in a very long time.
That's
just from the
sure.
range he brings, and just the fact. Also, I have to. This has been years now, so people don't care as much. I still can't believe the Red Sox traded him to the Dodgers, but that's whatever.
I was so happy as a Yankees fan.
Oh, I bet you were.
I was thrilled. And don't believe it, dude. I mean, I literally called out every single Red Sox fan I knew. And I was like, what the hell did you just do? And how does that make any sense? If they kept him, I would probably be the most depressed I've been in a long, long time. I mean, listen, and that's on top of like the Yankees having their own problems too. It adds up.
Yeah. But yeah, the fact that they let him go, but then he goes to Dodgers. He had a bit of a down year statistically last year because he had some injury concerns, but I'm not worried about him at all. I'd be very surprised if he isn't right in that top 2 or 3 for MVP candidacy going in, as long as he doesn't have any injuries again this year.
He seems like he'll always be there.
Yeah, he impacts the game in so many ways. It's one of those situations where you can't hit to him anywhere in the outfield and expect anything.
He's one of those guys where, like, if you hate him too, you'll always see his name pop up, and he's like, he's not even having a good season, you know?
Like, you don't think he is, then you look at them statistics, you're like, okay, well, all right. I mean, he makes things so much easier for the rest of that outfield too, because Bellinger's a good defender too, but like, he just picks that lineup up a little bit, and just adding on having Freeman now join that lineup. I mean, I don't know how any of these guys aren't going to hit good with who they're backing up and going up after. So I'm expecting a big season from him. And then Bryce Harper at number 5. Now, this is probably one of the most like up and down players, at least in the opinion of a lot of baseball fans, of like, is he
at least the past couple of years? I mean,
right, like, is he really an MVP player? Is he not? But last year, I think he kind of showed that when he's actually comfortable, when the team around him is doing well, as far as hitting the ball, and they added a bunch of hitters, so he should be fine from that perspective. He is an MVP caliber player when he's on, and last year he was definitely on. So for me, like, he's not as good of a defender as he was early in his career, I don't think, honestly, even though he's not an older player. I think he just kind of flashed early on, not as great now. Never been a big, base stealer, none of that, but just again with the bat, so much that he does helps the rest of that lineup because he's going to get on base a ton. Teams are afraid to pitch to him. They walk him a ton. He's very patient. He doesn't strike out a ton. He's probably going to be up there strikeout leaders every year, but gets a lot of at bats. He gets the lineup moving. But again, he factors in so much to what they do offensively that their defense, which is probably going to be bad this year. I mean, they've added a bunch of pure hitters to this lineup in the offseason. It just probably won't matter because with how many runs they're going to put up with this team, if they all gel and they can figure it out, they're going to be one of those teams that are probably bottom 5 in defense, but it won't matter much in terms of their standings at the end of the year. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. And a guy that I probably have over Harper in a situation where he was playing the whole year, Ronald Acuna Jr. at 6. He's the definition of a 5-tool player. Like, if you look up in the dictionary right now, give me a 5-tool player, does literally everything, either great or maybe even elite. This is a 40-40 guy, 40 home runs, 40 steals type of player. Like, that's the kind of guy that you're getting from a healthy Acuna Jr. So, although he's going to probably not show up until May, he still might end up near the top of a lot of categories by the end of the season, especially as a base stealer. And it's something that's not happening as much nowadays with the way baseball is played. Yeah. Really helpful.
I was about to say, those statistics have to be down.
Yes, for sure.
Since, gosh.
Really, since...
I would have to look up the stats. It's been a minute since I've looked up anything like that in particular, but, I totally understand what you're saying from that point.
Yeah, so he's a very unique player in the sport right now, too, where he's a power speed guy. Not a lot of that happening as much anymore, especially actual speed on the base paths and not just being able to steal bases, but get that extra base on a first to third or score from second on a shallow hit to the infield. Like he just creates a lot of havoc out there too. And people have to really key on him and keep him from doing stuff on the base pass that other players don't have to do or don't have to worry about. So I'm hoping to see him bounce back after the ACL last year. And then the guy that a lot of people still wanted to be the MVP last year in the AL, even though you can't really justify it with how good Ohtani was from both sides, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. clocks in at number 7.
Vladdy.
He is the AL's version to me of Juan Soto in the sense that there is no holes in his game as a hitter at this point.
No,
especially if he,
no.
Yeah, especially if he even sort of repeats from last year, right?
Yeah.
Just the power. The only thing he doesn't have as a player, honestly, is obviously defense and speed, right? He's a first baseman. That's not something that's going to really affect him negatively as far as his impact on the team. And again, he's just so hard to get out. I've seen him hit pitches that I don't know how in the world he could have possibly got the bat of the ball. And then he drives him out of the yard. Like,
I've been seeing this forever because his farm team in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I was able to go see him play for the Bisons.
Awesome.
And then I even got to catch a couple Blue Jays games in Buffalo this past year because of COVID and stuff.
Yeah.
So no, the dude is massive too. And like it's so funny because I always take a look at baseball players and you always forget, like, if you're not around the sport or you're around sports that require a lot of padding, these guys don't wear pads. Like they rarely wear big padded material. And these guys are huge. When I saw Vladdy and then I saw Judge next to each other, I was like, oh,
Judge is like 6'8" too, or how
I know, but still,
crazy.
You're looking at them, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I think Josh Allen threw out the first pitch too, Bill's quarterback. So all three of them were right next to each other, and I was just like, oh
huge
my
people,
Lord.
Unbelievable. Well, also baseball just tends to guys don't get the same credit for their just size and athleticism in baseball.
Dude,
just because you don't see it as often.
It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it.
The game is such a stop-start thing, even more so than like a football or anything like that. That it's hard to think of them like that. But you see some of the stuff these guys. I mean, some of the leaping grabs even too. Like speaking of which, number 8 here, Fernando Tatis Jr. Again, farther down than a lot of people have him, mostly because I'm not really sure when he's going to play this year. And that's kind of been the question for him is he's only played, believe it or not, 273 games in his MLB career so far. That's it. Now he's been phenomenal in those 273 games.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to knock him for that. But again, until I see him have a true full season where we get to see him, what kind of numbers
it's so
he can
funny,
put up.
how you mentioned that too, because literally we were just talking about this. You have to see these guys play close to full seasons in order to actually know if they're worth it. At least if you're going for championship level.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just going for stats wise or maybe looking for an MVP or something like that,
right,
that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're looking championship, you got to have them play over what? At least 3/4 of the season. So
at least I think if you play 120,
which is hard to do.
Yeah, if you hit that 120 game mark, that's kind of where if you play more than that, you're in good shape. If you're playing less, then you probably need to get working on your body and stuff like that, try to get healthy. But again, I want to see a full season from him. I don't know if it's hopefully it's 2023. This injury was kind of a weird one. Apparently, it may have had something to do with the motorcycle situation or whatever. But hopefully, he does have no more instances like this, and we get to see him play fully. But even with that, last year he missed a good chunk of time. Was still in the MVP conversation. So I had to still keep him on the list just because I know what he can do, even with a small sample size. So hoping to see him get better. Really, his defense is what's kind of holding him back from being a top 3 player for me. Is he's not a great defender at shortstop. He makes some great plays. But as far as kind of a consistency thing, sometimes hitting the ball to him is not the worst thing if you're on the other side. So we'll keep an eye for him. But then number 9, a guy that probably just because of his age and the fact that he started off a little bit slow, but then kind of got it going at the end of the season. Freddie Freeman is number 9 for me. And the Dodgers
I put him up there. I mean, honestly, I would put him a little higher, even though I understand the whole age thing. But I mean, at least he's in the top 10. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, he's a guy that because of the fact that, again, he does play first base, which isn't a premium defensive position. He's a great first baseman when for defensively for his position. But it's really just comes down. He's the most complete hitter outside of maybe if Guerrero repeats what he did last year at first base, especially in the National League now too. So if you're the Dodgers, you get a guy that is going to get on base close to 40% of the time. He's probably going to get you at least 25 plus home runs. He can be a catalyst for an offense that doesn't really need one, which is the sad part about it. I mean, they spend a ton of money for a guy that, is he going to be one of their best hitters? For sure. But was he 100% necessary? No, but that's what the Dodgers do. They say, give me $20 million for somebody that'll play, whatever. So
I know what that feels like.
Yeah, I'm curious what he's going to put up statistically, just because it's either going to be a little bit less just because he doesn't need to do as much, or it's going to be even more spectacular than we've seen him just because so many guys are going to be on in front of him often. So could see a huge RBI season, especially from him too, with the way that he can put the ball in play and get on base, get those guys home. So still going to have him in my top 10. I am wondering, how much longer that's going to be, because the first base it's an easier position defensively, but it's still one you don't want to play into your mid-30s and hit still too. So especially with the DH becoming a thing in the NL, I wonder how long he'll not be in that spot for them too, but we'll see. And then an interesting one I haven't seen on any other list, but I'm kind of sticking my neck out on this guy just because I like everything about him as far as his pitching profile and what he's shown, especially last year. I have Walker Buehler as my 10th guy. And to me, last year, he was top 3 or 5 in almost every major category as a pitcher, especially in the National League. He's top 3 in ERA in all of baseball. He was through the second most innings of any pitcher, which I think is a big thing when you're looking at who's the best pitcher and who's one of the best pitchers in the league now. Is, can you be a guy that in the league now where you rarely top 160, 170 innings, can you get me 200 innings? Can you get me 7-8 innings of a start whenever you're pitching well? He's one of those guys that can do that, and that kind of elevates him to me above some of the other guys that might have a little bit more statistical dominance from a start to start rate, but you do get more out of him every start typically.
Gotcha. I mean, I think it's a great list, to be honest. A couple of ones that are like, here's like here and there, but at the end of the day, the people do need to realize like this is what you're thinking of if they're playing their full season, or like what you're expecting to get out of them. Yeah. So, there are definitely a couple of guys that I really like in there. Maybe a couple of guys a little higher, like for me, Freddie, obviously. But no, just in general, I think really good list. And obviously it'll change. It'll change in the next couple of weeks. Or
we'll see what happens.
We'll take some time, and obviously some guys are going to be out for a little bit, so we'll have to wait for that. But no, I'm just happy it's back though.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, because I'm a Pirates fan, I'm probably not going to love the start of the season.
Did you know if you put $100 on them to have the best record in baseball, you'll win $100,000? So
yeah, I mean, I'll just keep my $100, but yeah. But hey, it's good to know in case I get real desperate. But no, maybe once Cruz comes up, so I'm really happy. But really, last thing I wanted to talk about, just because we're about to start the season, obviously, a big topic that's been getting talked about for years, really, but especially it's come up recently, thanks to the Moneyball Oakland A's, as everyone likes to consider them. They're really, you probably can just keep money out of anything related to them because they don't want to spend any. Yep. Getting rid of basically any
plain and simple.
Getting rid of any player that had any sort of potential, contract value coming up. But this issue in baseball has been something that I've dealt with as a Pirates fan. That's, if you're an Orioles fan or a fan of the A's, all too well. It's the disparity from the top teams in payroll to the bottom teams. And to give you guys an idea, listening at home, if you guys don't know this, as of right now, this could change with money being moved around or if trades happen, whatever. There are more teams with over $200 million in payroll, 5, than there are teams under $50 million in payroll, 4. So 9 of the 30 teams in MLB are either 200 million over or under 50 million in payroll.
That is, oh my gosh.
And that disparity is not something you see in any other major, especially American sport right now.
Yeah.
Like sometimes soccer teams have weird, like in terms of how much they can spend and stuff like that. That's a big disparity. But in the major sports in America, none of them come close to that type of disparity. And it's mostly, due to cap in the other leagues where you do have some sort of cap on what you spend and what you don't. But
yeah,
to see a team spend $0 in free agency, which is what the A's did, 0. I mean, if you bought, I saw this earlier on Twitter, I'm going to steal it. If you bought the newest MLB game for whatever system you're using, you spent more money on baseball
Oakland
A's this year. to do that.
Oh, that's not a good look.
It's
Or
not,
I would just
and
be like, you know what? It may have been my team growing up, but if they're not going to spend money and I'm spending money to go watch games, why even be a
yeah,
fan?
there's going to be people that spend significantly more money to watch them play than the A's will
Yeah.
spend
Oh, yeah.
on new players for this year.
Yeah.
And again, like sometimes when it comes to the owners, like they just don't want to spend the money because they don't think they can compete. Other times it's because they don't care if they can compete. But at some point, and a lot of people said that they don't like this, and this was a talk during the lockout. I still feel the only way to confidently make sure that every team is at least putting enough of an effort forward to maybe not contend, but at least build up some sort of semblance of an actual MLB roster is to have some kind of cap floor. Now, it doesn't have to be anything gigantic, it doesn't have to be $100 million or whatever, but something closer to what the average payroll generally has been over the past 5-10 years, right? Because
Yeah.
right now we're sitting at around 120, 130 million on average, but a lot of top teams are really bumping that average up. So maybe you say 80, 90 million, something like that, at least more reasonable, where a lot of these free agents that get signed for way too little money have somewhere that they know they can go play if they need to find a team, and they have to pay them to show up, basically.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's what I think is happen.
it's I don't see. I mean, I don't know personally if there's been like talks about this throughout the league and stuff. I know this has been a problem for years.
Yes, yeah.
So it's like, at what point do fans and just the fans of teams like the A's and stuff that don't go out and really just like try and win? Like, at what point does the MLB say, hey, it's become too much? Like,
Exactly.
as of right now, I feel like they wouldn't really want to do that because they're
Yeah.
happy with all the income they're making.
Exactly.
It's all the star teams, the big city teams that it goes around in any other sport. Like, if you have a big city, or just some big names or a really good upbringing from when your team was started, you're gonna make it if you spend money.
Mm-hmm.
The teams that don't, they're gonna crumble. It's just how it goes. But I just don't see the MLB doing anything
No,
about it.
I don't think they're going to either. And really, probably the best chance we have in the near future is that some of these teams that aren't spending any money, the owners decide to cash in at some point and sell the team to hopefully somebody who wants to come in and spend
I
some of that
know.
money.
And like,
that's really what it comes down
I've
to.
even always thought of like, relocation and stuff,
Yeah.
but it's just too much. But for
It
me,
is.
these organizations have too much history with the
Yes,
sport.
especially the A's and even the Pirates.
Especially the
Like-
A's.
Like they've
And
been,
for me, it just, I think that's really the only way, because the MLB is not going to do anything. They're not going to relocate them.
I don't think so.
That will never happen. I just, and I think they would have to fix that before they start expanding more teams.
Yes.
If that
And
ever
that's the
came.
other thing too, is that's been such a big conversation too. And I'm like, how can you justify adding more teams unless you have owners lined up that are willing to say we're going to spend money to build this team? Like,
If they did that, if they did find owners that would do it,
yeah,
honestly, it might be a good thing, because it might get the owners of those other struggling teams to be like, oh my gosh, we need to step it
yeah,
up. I mean,
something, yeah.
seriously. Yeah, no, it's just not a good look. But for me, I just can't wrap my head around like the league actually trying to do something about it.
And we've seen this with this lockout, like how little they were willing to concede on early on, and they took forever to get the talks going. Like, that's the biggest problem right now if you're an MLB fan, is you kind of know that the sport itself, the people that run it, don't really care that much about you or baseball. Like, we all kind of collectively understand that, and it's really just your personal care for the sport itself that's keeping you around.
Yeah.
And for the teams like the Pirates have been rough when it comes to attendance the last few years, because the people know, and that's one of the reasons I haven't bothered to go to a game, is like, I know that they're not truly interested in competing. I mean, they fought with Brian Reynolds over like $500,000 for arbitration. I mean, this is a guy who was one of the 5, as far as WAR goes, one of the 5 most valuable position players last year in the National League, on a team with nobody with him, and you're fighting him about $500,000. That's all you really need to know about where some of these teams are right now.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I guess the only other thing I could think of is like the MLB demanding that these owners, either leave
Yeah.
or do something fast. Be like, hey,
open
either
this up
got
for
you
sale
got
or
this
something.
season to do your magic and actually show to us that you're interested. If not, then like a mandatory sell. I don't know. It's something crazy to think about.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I think that I do think that especially if the teams are at the bottom of the payroll, which really the only team I could see, and I'll probably talk about them more next week, that I could see maybe still being competitive this year is the Guardians, but that's just because they have a couple still premier players. And
Yeah, they do, and they've had recent success though.
Right. So
That helps. That
exactly.
helps a lot.
Even then, like they're still a good like 5, 6, 7 million above the rest of the bottom tier of teams. And like again, you just can't expect, unless you have a team full of rising stars, which that doesn't ever really happen. You can't get by on $35-40 million payroll and expect to compete. And that's what they're doing. So
well, I appreciate you bringing all these topics up, dude. It was great to talk with you.
Yeah,
and I think that's gonna do it for this show of The Block. Thank you for everybody to tuning in. We'll be right back here next week at 6:30. And yeah, it was a great time, buddy. I appreciate it. And we'll see you all next week.